people signed up blows me away. And I know that this is a free event, but the most valuable commodity you have is your time. That is the only commodity you cannot get back. So the fact that you are willing to spend your time with myself, with Adam, and with Jackie, trust me when I tell you, we are incredibly grateful for that. And I don't want to go any further without saying thank you from the bottom of my heart for doing that. And to that point, Adam, I just want to thank you. Like I literally just wrangled these people in, and I'm like, hey, Adam, hey, Jackie, I know you guys are super busy and got a lot going on, but I'd love for you to do some teaching with me and share this thing we're really passionate about. And by the way, it's going to be for free, so I'm not going to make any money. And they're like, okay. So Adam, thank you.
Absolutely. It's purely my pleasure.
And Jackie, thank you.
Thank you for inviting me, Elliot, and thank you to Adam.
Yes. So you guys, literally, I just want you to know how much it means to the three of us that you guys are willing to dedicate your time and spend it with us. So, and because of that, so Jackie is one of the most brilliant clinicians I've ever met. I actually met Jackie in a very odd way. Jackie found some of my material online and invited me to South Africa. And on that first trip, I did some teaching for Jackie, and then Jackie and I were invited to a conference in Stellenbosch, South Africa, which is right next to Cape Town. And I went into a workshop where Jackie was teaching about solution-focused brief therapy, and I was completely blown away. The work that Jackie does in the field of trauma in using solution-focused brief therapy completely blew me away. She is captivating. She is brilliant. She is amazing. And she created something called the Hope Assessment Checklist. And if you stay to the end, Jackie has allowed me to give that to you. So everybody who's on this call, if you stay to the end, we're going to give you the link so that you can download Jackie's Hope Assessment Checklist for free. You can just have it. Melody, you have the link for that, right?
I have it standing by.
Perfect. So once we get to the end, Jackie's going to do some teaching. She's going to talk about the importance of hope in client work. And trust me when I tell you guys, you're gonna want this tool. And all you got to do is stay to the end. We're going to post that link. You can download it, take it, and use it in your work. And Jackie, thank you so much for allowing me to share your brilliant work.
Thank you so much, Elliot, for those kind words. I'm very, very honored that you said that. It is also putting some pressure on me to perform. So as I see everybody joining from all over the world, I'm really excited to get stuck in and share with you.
Yeah, this is going to be great. So, Jackie, I'm about to turn it over to you, but before I do, I want to share with you guys how Jackie, Adam, and I came to be. Like, if you look at this picture, these are three people with three completely different backgrounds, three completely different life experiences. And one of the things we want to highlight is the strength and power of diversity. What you're looking at is a Black man from inner city Chicago. We're looking at a suburban white dude with all the privilege in the world and a South African from a developing nation. But what brings us together is love. We genuinely love each other. We genuinely love this work, and we genuinely have a passion for the work that we do in this field. And in this world where we are clearly struggling with what makes us different, I want you guys to see that if you embrace your differences, they become your greatest strength. And there is almost nothing that Adam, Jackie, and I have in common except love. But just like that song, All You Need Is Love, that's more than enough. And once that happened, our weaknesses became our strengths. And on the strength of that, we are now on this journey together. And I couldn't imagine being in a better place with better people. So as we go forward in 2019, diversity is the strength. Now, I'm not just saying that because this is also relevant in our professional work with people who experience a trauma. Because the way that our journey started, and I'm going to start with how we started working in trauma, because like I said, I think Jackie is one of the most brilliant therapists in the world, really with any problem, but one of her passions is in working with trauma. And when I heard her give that lecture, I was just blown away. Because how many of you out there, and please admit it if it's you, because I was like this, and I don't want to sit here and be totally embarrassed like I'm the only one. When you first started learning about solution-focused brief therapy, how many of you thought, yeah, this approach sounds great, but how do you use it with someone who has like a real problem? Like, how do you use it with a young girl who's been sexually assaulted? Or how do you use it with somebody who's been the victim of a violent crime? Or how do you use it with someone who's been locked in a closet for a year? Like, how do you use it with somebody who has a problem that just can't be solved? Like, have you guys wondered that? Like, say me or yes in the comments if you're someone who thought solution-focused brief therapy sounds great, but how do you do it with someone like with real, genuine, tremendous struggles? Melanie, what are they with me? Are they following that?
Yes, and you're definitely not alone.
Because that was my thing too. Like, I could imagine myself asking someone who come to therapy, back then we called it the worried well. I could imagine myself working with someone who's worried well and saying, so what are your best hopes from our talking? And the client saying, oh, I would love to be better in school, da da da. But what do you do when you say, like, what are your best hopes from our talking? And the client says, I'm the only survivor in a car crash where my entire family died and I now live with my uncle and it's not going, it's like, whoa, how do you use solution-focused brief therapy with people from this scenario? And it really, really stumped me from a long time. And the greatest thing that ever happened to me was meeting people like Adam and Jackie, because hope just like oozes out of their pores. And it helped me realize that the key dynamic in this situation is hope. So fast forward a few years, and we get approached to write a book for Oxford University Press. Adam is actually the lead author on that book. Shout out to Adam. And he asked me to help him write that book. He wrangles Jackie and I into writing that book. And as we honed our ideas, because whenever you write a book, it forces you to like go really deep and in depth into your thoughts about a topic. And as we got deeper and in depth, we like dreamed of this moment. Like, because the more you have these things, if you're like Jackie and Adam and I, when you get really excited and enthused about something, you just want to share it with everybody. Because I want everybody to know that feeling of going from like stuck with clients who have tremendous troubles to being really confident, like, you know what, I know what to do. And that's really what this process is all about. And that's what our journey is about. That's what our partnership about. And we are really, really excited to share it with you. So Jackie, are you ready? Like, I want them to hear your ideas about hope, man. Like, are you guys, I can't even say, like, who is excited to hear Jackie talk about hope?
I'm ready, Elliot, I'm ready.
The key ingredient to successful therapy is hope. And Jackie is one of the most prolific hope dealers I've ever met in my life. When I first met Jackie, she said she wanted to start a solution-focused bushfire in her native country in South Africa. But what I realize now is Jackie just literally, she dropped a spark of hope, and now that bushfire is a raging inferno all around her country. So Jackie, please, I'm ready for you to share.
Well, thank you, Elliot. I recall very, very clearly saying that I want to set a solution-focused bushfire throughout Africa, but sharing with you and Adam today seems like we're creating quite a worldwide fire, and we're spreading solution-focused thinking all over. So I'd like to start by acknowledging that we are all online today because we are hopeful. Hopeful that we'll get something out of this hour, hopeful that we'll be able to take something out of this discussion that will help us help somebody else cope or manage their trauma. So this hour is already full of an incredible hopeful energy, and hopeful energy that we are going to learn, that we are going to empower other people that have gone through tough times. I'll never forget in 2017, when I went to the Solution Focused World Conference in Frankfurt, Chris Iveson from Brief said that clients come to therapy with hope already intact, hope already present. Well, this was a complete game changer for me. I suddenly realized I don't have to make hope. I just have to take the hope that's already present and make it grow. So no matter what trauma your client is experiencing, no matter what hardship your client has gone through, the mere fact that your client has come to therapy, the mere fact that your client is sitting in the room means that that hope is already present. Chris mentioned that asking for help is hope implicit. And I think our job is to catch the hope and to make the hope grow. My personal hero, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, was responsible for heading up the Truth and Reconciliation Commission here in South Africa after the abolishment of apartheid. Desmond Tutu heard thousands and thousands of stories of trauma. And in his book, it's called The Book of Joy, he writes that suffering is inevitable. How we respond to the suffering is our choice. I believe that it is our job to help the clients respond to trauma differently, because that's how we create hope. That's how we make hope grow. So no matter what kind of trauma our clients have to manage, the key ingredient in helping people overcome trauma is hope. Elliot also once said that the most important thing in any session is hope. And I also think it's very important for all of us to know that there's a big difference between hope and optimism. Optimism is a feeling. You feel optimistic about something. But hope is much, much deeper. Hope is a deep-seated conviction. It's a deep belief. Hope requires faith, a faith in human nature to be able to handle things and to keep living. Tutu writes that hope in many ways is similar to love. And that's why I got quite emotional just now when Elliot was talking about the common thread between Adam, Elliot, and I is love. Because Tutu writes that hope in many ways is similar to love. So many of you might have heard me tell this story at the Solution Focus Conference in New Mexico. But when we were busy writing this book for Oxford, we were on quite a tight deadline. And Elliot had to write chapter 1. And we'd all finished. Adam had been very busy, diligently putting it all together. And Elliot was not sending chapter 1. So I mailed Elliot and asked him, where's chapter 1? And Elliot replied, he's struggling with the first word. As a straight talking South African, I mailed him back and said, try the. Embarrassed for saying that, because
Totally
when Elliot finally did send the book, the first word in a book on solution-focused brief therapy and clients managing trauma is hope. And that's what it's all about. It's about hope. It all boils down to hope, because hope is it's the essential component of working with clients that have gone through a tough time. So this might be a summit about trauma, but I do know for Adam, Elliot, and I, it is actually a discussion on how to plant seeds of hope and how to get people through a hopeless time and help them feel that hope can grow again. So I know all of you listening there is going to say to me, okay, Jackie, that's great. But how do we do it? How do we actually go about planting seeds of hope? Nice theory, Jackie, but how do we do hope? Well, for me, it all boils down to becoming a resilientologist instead of a victimologist. A resilientologist is somebody who works with a hero full of, with a waiting room full of heroes. Elliot writes so nicely in our book that we need to shift our focus away from all these problems associated with trauma towards the client. We need to shift our focus towards the client's strengths. We need to shift our focus towards the client's capacity for change. And we need to shift our focus towards hope. That's what makes us resilientologists. A resilientologist does hope by becoming what Evan George from Brief in the UK calls an attention shifter. I think it's our job to shift our clients' attention out of that trauma rut that they enter the room in with. We need to shift their attention back to a hopeful version of themselves and back to a hopeful future. Because our clients often come in where they've lost hope. How do we do hope? Well, I believe you have to look, listen, speak, and believe in a specific way in order to be a hope giver. We have to be able to look at people differently. You know, Elliot, as a solution-focused practitioner, I think we need a lens of resilience. We need to hear our clients' distress. We need to acknowledge their pain or their trauma, yet we need to keep looking, searching for any signs, any clues of strength, of coping, of recovery, any signs of resilience. For me, doing hope means I listen differently to people. I build relationships with clients, with people, and I don't build a relationship with a trauma story, or in my case, because I work with a lot of violent crime, I don't want to have a dance with terror. I want to build a relationship with a resilient person that has gotten through a difficult time. And I want to constantly hear their resilience and reflect it back to them and reflect back their coping, their strengths. Bill O'Hanlon calls this Rogers with a twist. I want to be able to not only reflect difficulty, but I want to be able to reflect resilience as well. And then something that Adam is so brilliant and such a genius at is sharing with us how we do hope through our language. You know, solution-focused therapy is known as a modality that has hope-catching language, because we ask questions full of hope. We ask questions of what clients want and what they want differently, putting hope into the room from the very first question we ask. We're asking questions that continuously construct a new version of reality. For example, we'll ask, how have you managed to cope? Rather than, how did the trauma affect you? We do hope by using what I call magic words, the presuppositions. These magic words that we add to the beginning and the end of our statements. Like, for example, at the moment you're having a hard time, or despite the terrible things you've been through, or you just haven't found a way to cope yet, or even suppose you caught yourself coping, what would you notice is different? This language serves as an attention shifter, and it creates possibility, and I believe it allows hope to grow. And then, Elliot, finally, how do we do hope? How do we make hope grow? I think we need to look and approach our clients as heroes and not as victims. You know, Elliot, before solution-focused therapy, I was extremely scared of my clients. I was scared of hearing all these trauma stories. Listening to trauma on a weekly basis makes you scared of leaving your home, especially if you live in a country that has quite high crime statistics. But since becoming a resilientologist, a solution-focused therapist, I'm inspired by people. I'm amazed by what people cope with. I'm just so in awe of how people manage. So I believe we do hope by believing in the resilience of our clients, by really acknowledging how people thrive. And this leads to a whole energy of you being impressed by your clients and creates what we wrote in our book called Vicarious Resilience, because you too become inspired. When you see what people manage to handle, you're amazed, and this gives hope. So for me, and I know for you and Adam, we believe that no matter what trauma the client has gone through, no matter how hard the hardship, our job is to elicit hope, because hope is powerful, and it is a crucial and effective part of therapy with clients that have been through trauma.
Wow. So, first of all, one of the things I forgot to tell people is we are recording this, and you guys will have access to the recording for a short period of time, but you'll have access to the recording. So I hope that you guys took notes and soaked in what Jackie had to say. Jackie, thank you so much. How many of you, as you listened to Jackie, could see how I was so moved when I heard Jackie talk? Like, I want you to put into the comments, like, how many of you could catch it? Like, say me if you were like, yep, I get it. I understand. Because I had that shift where we're trained to focus on symptoms, problems, and trauma. And now I'm listening to this brilliant woman talk about things that inspire the human heart. And look, we could sit here and talk to you about the techniques of solution-focused brief therapy. We could talk to you about the best hopes question, the miracle question, exception finding, and scaling. But the truth is, the honest to God truth, is that's not the magic of solution-focused brief therapy. The magic is in exactly what she was saying. It's in belief. And we use phrases sometimes when we talk about love that automatically engender thoughts of like romantic love. But when I heard Jackie talk, it was love at first sight. I knew I had found my people. I knew I had found my sister in this world, in this work. And we have been literally working closely together and just bonding ever since. And Jackie, thank you so much for sharing your brilliance. Melody, were they getting it? Like, because I purposely don't see the comments when the webinar's this big, when the venue is this big, because it would just totally distract me. So Melody's feeling it for me. Melody, please tell me they were feeling that and they really, really followed what Jackie was saying.
Absolutely. I'm not sure if Jackie can see either, but, inspiring, love this, definitely blown away. Wow, everyone's just loving it.
Perfect, because listen, once you learn that my job is to inspire people and be impressed by people, then applying the solution-focused brief therapy questions is infinitely easier, right? It infinitely makes more sense. Where we get tripped up is we try to learn the questions and learn how to apply them in our problem-focused training. And Jackie literally turned that on its head for me when I was like, oh my God, it's not about that at all. It's about inspiration and then putting my questions in the inspiring context, right? So Jackie, you did great, my friend.
Thank you, Elliot, and thank you for being part of my tribe. And I'd like to everybody who's online to be part of our solution-focused tribe as well.
No, and Jackie, I don't know if you can see or not, right? But we have, and we've done these sorts of things, or I mean, I've never done one of these with you, but like I do these pretty often. We have almost 400 comments already. So you guys keep it coming because we are feeding off of that energy. And it is so nice to know that you're coming with me, right? When you do a training live, you can see people's head nods and you can see people not sleeping and all this sort of thing. But here, like to see your comments and to hear Melody tell me what's going on, like it is literally giving the energy. So now I want to talk, kind of pick up where Jackie left off. Like you have to find the hero in your client. So just like what I was saying, the questions and the techniques matter, but the mindset matters 1,000% more. And I want to tell you a quick story about a client I saw just yesterday. So I saw a client yesterday who was a young girl who had been through a tremendous amount of trauma. She had been sexually assaulted in her youth, which led to her having misbehaviors in her teenage years. As a result of those misbehaviors, her parents sent her to a wilderness camp, you know, one of those Colorado kind of wilderness camps where they send teenagers who aren't behaving. And her parents, in her words, abandoned her and left her there for 2.5 years. When she graduated from that wilderness camp, which wasn't a high school graduation, by the way, you just graduated from the wilderness camp. She's now 19 and comes back home, and she's got resentment towards her parents. She has anger and frustration about the abuse that happened, and she starts using heroin. She comes back, uses this heroin. She goes to multiple rehab centers and is unsuccessful at getting rid of the heroin behaviors. But then she said something to me. She said, I've been clean for 6 weeks. I was like, how did you do that? If you're telling me that the treatment centers didn't work, how did you do it? And she said, I realized that if the treatment centers weren't going to help me, I had to help myself. Now, Jackie just said, like, you have to be impressed by clients. You have to develop the ability to be amazed by clients, because when you're amazed by people, you hear it. And when she said that, I was like, whoa, wait a minute. So you're telling me that you realized that if the treatment centers aren't going to help me, I have to help myself. And then you've spent 6 weeks clean from heroin. And by the way, guys, I'm assuming that a lot of people on this call haven't used heroin, but I am assuming that some of you are addicted to things like coffee. How hard would your life be if you had to give up coffee for 6 weeks? Like, raise your hand if you don't think you could give up coffee for 6 weeks. This young woman gave up heroin for 6 damn weeks. When I asked her how she did it, she said, because I realized if no one's going to help me, I had to help myself. So just like Jackie said, the decision to get help is courageous in and of itself. And implicit in that decision is hope. So I asked her, how do you get through the tough days? And she said, I just struggle through them. I'm like, holy cow. I'm talking to a woman who was unsuccessful at getting herself treatment in these treatment centers. And now she's able to just get herself through the tough days. And because I know in decisions like that is implicit hope, I said, and what are you hoping to achieve in doing this? And she said, when I was a 6-year-old girl, I decided I want to be a veterinarian. And she started to cry. And she said, and look at where my life has become. But you know what, guys? She's still young, right? I'm meeting her in her mid-20s, and she's still young. Now, in her head, she thinks, I've made too many mistakes to become a veterinarian. But in my head, I'm thinking, you got all day. You got all the time in the world. So suppose you woke up tomorrow and you were on your way to a life that contained being a veterinarian. What would you notice? And she starts describing decisions she was making. Now, one of my favorite things to ask people who have experienced a trauma is when they tell you what they'd like to become, it's usually not something they can do overnight, right? So you can't become a veterinarian overnight. You can't go home and take a 3-hour course on becoming a veterinarian and then go do surgery on horses. Like, it doesn't work that way. She's gonna have to do certain things to become a veterinarian. And I know on that list of things are make good choices, make healthy choices, be disciplined, get educated, all that sorts of stuff. So I just asked her, if you woke tomorrow and you're on the way to be a veterinarian, what would you notice? And she starts talking about eating, exercise. She just talked about like normal kind of life stuff. But you could see hope re-entering in this person's life. She never told me what she was going to do. She never told me how she was going to do it. She never told me any of that stuff. You could just watch hope walk back into this woman's spirit. This morning, I woke up to an email from her mother telling me that her daughter, who she has watched go through these horrible behaviors, woke up this morning and enrolled in a GED class. Those of you not in America, GED stands for General Education. Adam, is that right? A general education degree. And it's what you get in replacement to a typical high school diploma. And her mother goes on to say, we have been begging her to do that for years. She goes to one session. How did you get her to go? And I wanted to say, she never told me she was going to do that. I didn't even know that was on the list of things. But what happens is when someone has hope, they start behaving differently. And I just don't know what else to call that except a superhero trait. Because this young girl is able to harness her strength and do amazing things, right? So the question I always ask people is like, I don't know how many of you are Marvel fans. Like, are there Marvel fans out there watching this? Like Captain America and Iron Man and Incredible Hulk, and like watch all of the series. Like I watch all the series, and I make all my friends watch all the series, as Adam can attest to. And if I told you that you were doing therapy with Tony Stark, and let's imagine that you don't know who Tony Stark is. You're just doing therapy. And then halfway through the session, I walk in and I tell you, oh, by the way, that's Iron Man. Your ability to think about this person's capabilities goes up. So now I want to say to you, like, what happens when we treat every person like they're capable? What happens when we treat every person like they have superhero traits that are able to really, really harness and take over their lives? The worst thing about a trauma, and the thing that caused me to be so stumped, and this is another one of those moments, right? I need your support. I need you to say me too if you were here too. When a client tells you they have a problem, like, you know, when I was 15, I was sexually assaulted by an uncle or something like that. I find myself, or I used to find myself so stuck because there's nothing I can do, right? Have you guys been there? Like, they're asking for something. It's like, I don't have a time machine. I can't go back and undo it. There's nothing I can do to erase that problem. As much as I'd want to, I don't have the capacity to erase that problem. And that was the kind of thing that got me stuck. So anybody out there, that get you guys stuck too? Like, let me know, like, Melody, let me know if they're with me, because this is one of those things. Like, we got to follow each other, right? So if you had those moments where you're like, a client is asking for something, it's like, I don't know how to fix that. What I've learned is I don't have to fix it. I just have to turn my client into Iron Man and they'll fix it, right? I just have to turn my client into Captain America and they'll fix it, because they have to, no matter what, live the rest of their life with this trauma. So I want them to be able to live the rest of their life with their armor on that protects them from the impact of the trauma. And I think that is the most beautiful thing about solution-focused grief therapy, because that woman that I saw yesterday, I didn't do anything to her past mistakes, misgivings, problems, or traumas, but what I did was re-energize her ability to see herself as someone capable of becoming a veterinarian. And what does she do on that moment? She gets up and she takes a step towards her education. She never told me she was going to do it. She never told her mother she was going to do it, but she did it. And that is the power of solution-focused grief therapy. So are you getting that? Are you following how important that is? Because mindset is like everything when you're working with clients who have been through something difficult. I once had a client tell my boss, my last like real job, one of my boss who totally didn't believe in solution-focused grief therapy. She was a cognitive behavioral therapist, and she totally thought I should be doing cognitive behavioral therapy. And I started off doing cognitive behavioral therapy, and I was now doing solution-focused therapy. And one of my clients was singing my praises of the sessions we were doing to the psychiatrist. And my boss heard about this. So my boss actually went to the client and said, what is it about Elliot's session that's making it more difficult? And she was hoping that's making it more effective. It's making it effective. And she was really skeptical. So she was hoping for actually something to kind of help me understand I need to be doing CBT. And the client didn't say, oh, the miracle question. Oh my God, the scaling question. What the client said was, he believes in us. And the truth is, guys, when you sit in the presence of someone who believes in you, it changes you. And that is what we have to do for our clients. We have to allow our clients the impact and experience of sitting in a room with someone who believes in them, because it changes you. How many of you have been in a low, down, doubtful moment in your life and you crossed paths with someone who believed in you and it changed you forever, right? Like, we can be that. We can be that for every client we see, guys. That's what this approach offers. That's what this is all about. So how are we doing so far, by the way? So you've heard 2 out of the 3. Adam's coming up next. How are we doing so far?
Well,
Melody,
I can tell you that I don't think we've ever had so much interaction on a webinar. Everyone seems to be completely with you and have been where you are. So I think it's just going great.
Perfect. And people are following us, right? Woo.
Oh yeah.
Adam, are you ready, my man?
I'm ready. Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you guys, Adam is the most brilliant person I've ever known. Adam has a way of explaining theory and research and stuff. Like I don't really like research because it's a hard thing to translate into the like actual clinical room. Adam has a way of making completely complex things really, really simple. And one of the things I want Adam, or one of the things Adam's going to share in this webinar is going to talk about the process of solution-focused brief therapy. And what makes me so excited is he just has a way of breaking it down that just makes total sense and makes it so understandable. And there's no point in people just like sharing how brilliant they are because most of us can't follow them. Adam is that dude. So I'm really, really excited for Adam to talk about the process of solution-focused brief therapy and why this approach in fact does work with clients from with trauma backgrounds, all different traumas and all different problems. So Adam, you ready?
I think so. now I know what Jackie was talking about when she said, "And now I feel pressure." But I'll do my very best.
You can do it, Adam. You can do it.
Thank you, Jackie. Yeah, so one of the things that I would start with is that, and they actually teed this up beautifully. When you listen and you hear about hope from Jackie and how to just build that hope, and then you listen to Elliot and he talks about really believing in your clients. Those two things, in essence, are the beginning and should course throughout the entire process of a solution-focused session. And so one of the things that I would, and this might be a little bit challenging, but one of the things I would say is that it doesn't matter what the client is bringing in, what their presenting problem is, or what it is that they say that they want to talk about in the session. What really matters is that we have hopeful conversations with them. And this begins from the very first question that we ask. We begin by asking, what are your best hopes? And embedded in this question is so much belief. We believe, one, that the client, despite having all of this trauma or these different experiences, we believe that they still have hope. And if we begin by asking about that hope, then the hope can build. Fredrickson has a theory called broaden and build theory. And she talks a little bit about how when you feel good, when you have positive emotion, what happens is your mind and your ability to think outside of the box actually gets bigger. So one of the things that we know about trauma is that what happens is my concrete thinking becomes set in stone, and I only begin to think about one option or one way through. And as we begin to have these hopeful conversations, then I can begin to think about other options, and other options begin to turn into healing. The other thing that I would say is as we move throughout that, what are your best hopes? And we move into the next part of the session, typically we'll call this resource talk or something like that. And one of the things that I want to really emphasize here is that resource talk sometimes gets misconstrued to be about building a therapeutic alliance or getting to know your client or things like that. And one of the things that I would say is that's actually not what we're doing. What we're doing in the resource talk room is exactly what Elliot just spent those few minutes talking about. And it's really getting to know who is the hero that I get to sit with, right? And as I was thinking about this webinar and how to kind of convey this, one thought kind of kept coming back to my mind. That's an unusual way for me to kind of talk about this experience. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about what's going on in my own personal life at this moment as an example.
Oh boy. I'm gonna cry. Go ahead.
So one of the things, and some of you may know this, but my wife was diagnosed about 2 months ago with breast cancer, and you can tell that this is close to my heart. My wife and I have been married for about 17 years, and we have 3 children. And those 3 children are 14, 11, and 8. So 2 months ago, completely out of the blue with no warning signs, my wife was diagnosed with breast cancer. And in the breast cancer world, we are fairly young. We're actually very young in the breast cancer world. My wife just turned 40 last year. And so this is an unusual diagnosis for somebody so young. And one of the things that happened is that she found out that she had breast cancer while Elliot and I were teaching together in a different state from where I live. And so she had to call and she had to tell me that she was diagnosed with breast cancer while I was gone. Now, when she called to tell me this, she was crying quite a bit. For all intents and purposes, this could be considered a traumatic event, right? This could really and has changed the trajectory of her life and therefore our lives. One of the things that, the only thing that I come up with to say in that moment is to say, how do you know that you can do this, that you can get through this? And through her tears, she said to me, she said, because I have done hard things before. And we spent those few minutes talking to one another about all the hard things that she had overcome before this experience. And as we talked, our conversation changed from this is a horrible thing that's happening to think about all the things that we're going to learn and how we're going to grow and the strength that we're going to develop as we maneuver through this experience. And I think when we talk about from a solution-focused perspective, when we talk about the resource talk, it is these kinds of conversations. It's asking the questions, how do you know you're the kind of person who has the ability to get through this? Or if your best hopes showed up, what amazing qualities, skills, characteristics am I going to notice? Are other people in your life going to notice that you are drawing on? So I think one of the temptations that we have as solution-focused brief therapists is to get sidetracked when somebody comes in and says, I have had this very traumatic thing happen to me. But if we take that small moment and we say, oh, that is big, and we don't minimize that experience, but instead we say, how are you going to cope with this in the very best way that you already know how to cope with this? So I think all of that stuff that Elliot just talked about being the hero or finding the hero in each of our clients, we truly have to believe that it is there. And we have to not get distracted by what's going on in their lives, but instead say, how is that hero going to show up? Now, the bulk of what we do as solution-focused brief therapists is at that very minute language level. And we say, can you tell me the tiniest little signs that you're going to notice that says that hero is taking over more and more and more of your life? So we're going to say things that seem somewhat silly and say, no, on that day, what's different about the way that you drink your coffee? Or what's different about the way that your foot hits the ground on a day when the hero is taking over your life? And one of the things that we know from neuroscience and from all of those scientific places is that as hope grows, then optimism grows, then depression decreases, then anxiety decreases. So all of these side effects that come along with trauma, if we can build hope simply by asking questions about the hero taking over their lives, we are taking care of so many of these side effects of trauma without having to re-experience that trauma at all. Now, the other final thing that I want to talk about is this idea. Jackie really talked about hope. Elliot really talked about love. And so I want to just add one other component here, and that's what I would say is gratitude. And I think that as we walk through with our clients, through the descriptions of their desired outcomes, then we can express all of that through an expression of gratitude. And we can express that and say, you know, I understand that you have had a very difficult experience. And I'm so grateful that you would trust me to walk beside you along this description to when things are better, what is that going to look like? And as we begin to express through gratitude our ability to be with them, it also opens them up to begin to look around and say, there are also things that I can be grateful for. And gratitude is also one of those characteristics that as we begin to notice what it is that we're grateful for, it can simultaneously diminish the negative impacts in our lives as well. And so I think as we have these very purposeful conversations and we pick up their hopeful language and we pick up their language of love and we pick up their language of being a hero and we express our gratitude to them, this is really the difference between re-traumatizing through coming to therapy and healing by coming to therapy. And so in essence, we just encourage having these kinds of conversations.
Adam, so what you guys, as you can, I hope you can tell, Jackie, Adam, and I are very close. And as close as we are, I had no idea that I'm going to share that. So I have to say, Adam, thank you from the bottom of my heart, bro. Like, I love you. I can't even tell you what it's like to walk through this journey with you and your family. And look, guys, like, this is real for us. We are doing this because it is real for us. Jackie, myself, and Adam, we are all people who are survivors of and dealers with trauma. And we just want to make sure, because the narrative around trauma in our field is not, it's a different narrative than what we've experienced professionally, what we've lived, and we want to share this. Because what Adam just said about his wife, how could I describe her as anything other than a superhero? Because the strength she shows by responding to those questions about if she's done hard things before, that's what heroes do. And if you can view your clients in that way, if you can view people in that way, I promise you, your whole life will change and your work will change. So, oh my gosh, I am shook. So how are you, is this making sense? We've just shot a lot of stuff at you. We have a little bit more, and then we're gonna take questions here in about 2 minutes, and then I'm gonna share with you your free hope assessment checklist as promised. But before we go any further, is this making sense? And I'm gonna collect myself. Melody, how are we doing?
The overwhelming response is yes, absolutely.
Oh. Okay, so we're about to take questions, and Melody, get the link ready. I'm going to want you to share the link with them. But before we do, we're going to wrap up here pretty soon. But who is interested in keeping this learning going? So, quick question: how many of you would be interested in like a deep dive into this trauma work and really, really like take your trauma work to the next level and keep this going? How many of you out there would be interested in that?
Quite a few, I can tell you that for sure.
I was going to say, Melly, how are we doing? Okay.
We're doing good. We're doing great.
Okay, because we have put something together that, and look, guys, like we are just so passionate about this topic. We have been talking about trauma for so long. We have this like collection of videos and lecture and content. And I was like, hey, why don't we share it with people? And Jackie and Adam are on board with it. And this collection of content, it has video lectures from myself, Adam, and Jackie, going really deep. Like, we could do the best we can in this hour, but we like went really deep into these videos because we were like flushing out all of our thoughts and getting our stuff together and really, really turning it into like a learning process. All of the content available as PDF downloads, and Jackie has these amazing downloads in PowerPoints. Live training, Adam and I and Jackie have agreed to like get together and do some live teaching going forward as a part of this package. And then like session examples. And then also we want to make sure that people can understand that like they can get a certificate in learning how to think differently and work differently in this trauma process. And look, this is all worth, like, to get 3 people like us together on a routine basis, do coaching call, like, you'd have to pay us a consultation fee, which is really high. And you'd have to, have you guys ever tried to buy a training video of live therapy sessions? Like, sometimes they cost hundreds of dollars. I found one for $600 once. So all of this would be like a value of like $1,000. But if you guys want to sign up, we've decided to make this package available. It's only going to be available for a couple days, and it's only going to be available for $147 US dollars, which is really, really cool. This is what the portal looks like, where we have all of the content available in there. All you got to do is click on the links and watch the hours of lecture and session videos and all that kind of stuff. And here is the link. Melody, can you post this link in the comment section so they can hyperlink it and click there?
Yes, I just added it. It's over there in the chat section.
And we are referring to this program as STOP, Solution Focused Brief Therapy with Trauma Online Program, because we are just so interested. This is a really personal journey to us, which I hope you have noticed. And by the way, we just want to really, really spread this. So we're going to leave registration open for a few days. Thank you guys so much for being on this webinar. And with that, Adam, Jackie, you guys ready to take questions? Now that
I'm ready.
Wipe my eyes. Okay, Melody, let's take some questions.
All right, we have a whole bunch, so I'll just start from the top. Let's see.
Oh, and Melody, put the link to the free download I promised them to in the thing.
Okay, let me get one of these questions going, and then I'll add it over there.
Yeah, keep posting both links a couple of times so people can get there easily.
Will do. The first question is, what do you tell people who insist that re-experiencing techniques are required to help people recover from trauma? How does one lobby for buy-in or acceptance for SFT with colleagues, etc.?
Oh boy, Adam, you want to take that one?
Sure. Yes, there's 2 parts there. One, what do I say to people who say they need to re-experience it? There is a lecture in the course that really talks about this, but there's a difference between the approaching and the withdrawing systems in our brain. And the approaching basically says you're moving towards something that you want, and the withdrawing means you're moving away from. Those re-experiencing processes is a moving away from. We over-sensitize them so that you learn how to cope differently. Basically, what we know is that you don't have to activate the withdrawing process. You can simply activate the approaching process, and healing can occur. But I think bigger than that is, you heard Jackie and you heard Elliot, hope is such a healing factor, that hope is sufficient. But there's a lot more to that, which is there. The other component is, how do you advocate for this with colleagues and other professionals? If you email me, one of the things that I can send to you, or if you're a member of the SFU, actually, I just did a lecture on the evidence base of solution-focused brief therapy. That's this month's content, and there's a PowerPoint in there of all of the places that you can point to that solution-focused brief therapy is effective. So if you email me, I'm happy to send you some stuff. Or if you're an SFU member, just watch the new content that's coming out and you'll see it.
Perfect. All right, Melody, next question.
All right. The next question is, what do you say when the client responds, I have no hopes at all?
Oh my gosh.
I've had that.
Yeah, go ahead, Jackie.
I've had clients who say, after asking them, yeah, what are your best hopes for coming to talk to me today? Where a client says that I have no hope, there is no more hope left. When a client gives me a hopeless comment, I go back to my magic words and just reflect back by saying, at the moment, you feel as if there's no hope, or currently it seems as if there's no hope, because accepting that limiting comment also makes the therapist stuck. So for me, I'll validate and acknowledge how hard it is for them, that they are currently feeling hopeless, but I'm not going to stay there. So I will acknowledge it with a presupposition, and then keep going with other hopeful questions to possibly elicit coping, to elicit strengths, so that we could look at finding hope in another way.
Brilliant. And can I share, when people give me, as Jackie would refer to, as a hopeless response, as Adam said, we start off our sessions by saying, what are your best hope from our talking? If a client said, I don't have any hope, one of the things that I notice, or one of the things that like popped into my head right away, is if you didn't have any hope at all, coming to therapy has implicit hope. So people sometimes say to me, do I think there are hopeless people in the world? Yes, I do, but they're not in therapy. So the fact that they came to therapy is implicit hope. So I can ask questions like, if I had asked you that question on the day you scheduled this appointment, what might you have said? So you can also move on the timeline in the past to find where hope showed up. You know what I mean? So I think the key is when someone says they don't have any hope, don't accept that answer with finality. You know what I mean? So if they say they don't have any hope, it just doesn't mean that there's no hope, like the hope tank is on empty. It means that at the moment I'm asking them, I have a hard time getting in contact with it. So I can ask them questions at different points of the timeline to elicit hope. All right, Melody, what's next?
All right, next up is, how do you think about these same ideas for clients who are not in an action stage of change, such as clients who feel hopeless, are feeling lots of bias, or defeated, or just lonely?
That sounds like an Adam question.
I think part of the answer you already gave, right? And I think one of the things that Elliot says really, really regularly is there's a difference between believing your clients and believing in your clients. And I think this is one of these times where we have to, in some sense, say, we have to say, they may not feel hopeful right now, but we believe that there is hope in there. Snyder has the state hope scale and hope theory, and basically he advocates that hope is always present. There is more or less of it, but it isn't something that can completely go away. And so we have to be able to hold that hope until our client can reconnect with it. The other thing that I would say about that is we don't really take into consideration necessarily the stages of change. I think you're alluding to Prochaska's stages of change. And one of the things that I would say is, and Jackie's alluded to this a couple of times, we believe that through using presuppositional language, that their language can change. And a presupposition basically is a question that has an assumption built into it, right? What are your best hopes? Assumes that there is hope there. It also assumes some hopes are bigger than other hopes, or more important than other hopes. And so by Steve DeShazer said many, many times, language creates reality. As we use hopeful language, hope within this conversation can grow. So they might be very honest, and they might have walked in and they might have said, I don't feel any hope. But we have a responsibility as clinicians to ask hope engendering questions, and then trust that hope will build through this co-constructed conversation.
I totally agree with Adam. When Elliot came to Stellenbosch years ago, he said something in his presentation that completely shook me and resonated with me. Elliot said we have to trust our clients more than we trust the trauma. Trust over trauma. Trust and believe in your client more than you believe in the trauma story. I think it's our job not to give up on the client who is currently feeling hopeless. I think it's our job to keep trusting them and creating or asking questions that just elicit more and more possibility that lead towards hopefulness.
Absolutely. Melody, fire away.
All right. Do you ever run into situations with clients when the question appears too abstract for them or doesn't connect to them? If so, do you explain the intention behind the question? Do you rephrase, or do you move on to something else?
Rephrase, for sure. If I ask a question that doesn't connect, it's because it's a bad question. If you start explaining what you're doing to the client, then the client, instead of trying to answer your questions, the client starts trying to answer your questions correctly. And it hinders the therapy process. So if I ask a question that doesn't connect, it's usually because I've asked a bad question and I just rephrase until I figure out a way to ask the question better.
All right. Thank you, Elliot. And do you have any opinion on whether or not SFBT can work with other theories? And if so, how might they work together? And if not, how come? The examples given were TF-CBT, narrative, and EMDR.
So it depends on who you ask. Like, there are people that will say solution-focused brief therapy works really well with narrative. Somebody says it works well with strategic therapy. I often hear people compare it to motivational interviewing. I actually don't think solution-focused brief therapy to me is like water. If you have water in its purest form, it's just water. When you put something in water, it changes to the thing you put in the water. So for example, if I put a Kool-Aid packet, it's no longer water, it's now Kool-Aid, right? So if you combine solution-focused brief therapy with CBT, you've moved away from just the focus on description, desired outcome, and difference towards the other thing that CBT is. So you're now doing CBT with solution-focused language instead of the other way around. So I don't think solution-focused brief therapy blends with other approaches for that reason. And when you combine it with other things, it turns into that other thing.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree, because I think if the emphasis of the solution-focused session is what are your best hopes, and then the bulk of the session is, can you give me the smallest details that describe the best hopes, and when it's present, then I don't need every other approach has some component of problem language in it. And I'm not, by saying that, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. We know through research that lots of different therapeutic approaches are useful and work and help people. But what I'm saying is, in solution-focused brief therapy, one of the major premises is we steer clear of problem talk and problem language. And so anytime it creeps in, I'm now doing something different. Could it be helpful? It could be helpful, but is it still solution-focused? I would say probably not.
Absolutely, yeah, that's right.
All right, next up, I want to sit with someone in their disappointment and accept them regardless of their progress or lack of progress, be fully accepting of them. At the same time, I want to help them achieve their goals and be their best self. I have mixed experiences with SFT. I want to be authentic, but not overly cheerleadery. Can I have your feedback?
Yeah, and look, we didn't set out, how do I say this? When we decided to do this, and when I go all the way back to like writing the book, like we didn't set out to like, oh, let's like do a course and all that kind of things. To us, it's a progression. You can't learn solution-focused brief therapy just from reading one book, and you can't learn it just from attending a workshop at a conference or a webinar such as this. Like, you really have to take a deeper dive. So I don't mean to sound like, oh, buy the course or that sort of thing. But one of the things that why courses like that are so important and why Adam and Jackie and I decided to put it together is you have to learn the mindset and the language and be in an environment where you can practice it. And you have to learn like the detailed, subtle nuances of the approach. And a lot of times when people have mixed responses, and it's that way too. We're not well trained in things like solution-focused brief therapy in graduate school. You have to like learn to master the subtleties and nuances. And I don't know if you guys were like me, but when I was in graduate school, I remember reading a book that Jay Haley wrote about Milton Erickson. And in this book, he had transcribed all of Milton Erickson, well, not all, but he had transcribed some of Milton Erickson's sessions. And I was like, oh my God, therapy looks like it's going to be the most awesome, easy job ever. Because it seems like when you say the right thing, the client says the right thing. But as you guys know, conversation does not happen that way. And solution-focused brief therapy is a co-constructed, co-developed conversation that the only way to get good at it is to like really stay engaged in really in-depth trauma. So I cannot encourage you guys more to get to the course that we've made offer to you, because the one promise I will make you is by the end of that process, you will no longer have doubts or struggle with people who are dealing with big problems. And by the way, there's a money back guarantee, right? If after 2 weeks you think Elliot, Adam, and Jackie did not fulfill that promise, just send me an email and we'll return it to you. But there are clients out there right now, like this chokes me up. But there's a woman right now who's being diagnosed with cancer. She's driving home as we speak to tell her loved ones about this diagnosis. There's a young kid right now being locked in a closet. And 2 years from now, we're going to hear about on the news how they spent 2 years in a closet. There's somebody right now sitting in a prison wrongfully convicted, and they're being beaten and raped and mistreated and violated, and they're going to be let out of prison. And you know what? They're going to come to our offices, and we have to be prepared to help them. And that is why we advocate for this work. That's why we wrote this book. That's why we did this summit. And it's also why we want you to go even deeper and wanted to make a series like what we made available, so that you guys don't have those doubts, hesitations, and things like that going forward. So I cannot be a stronger advocate, guys, honestly. I promise. Get this course and you're not going to struggle with those clients anymore. And if we fail on that promise, just send an email saying we failed and we'll return it to you. Like it's literally that simple and straightforward. Because the answer to that question is practice and training. That really is the answer.
All right, next up, does SFT for trauma have some similarities with positive psychology?
Jackie, it's your turn, I think.
Elliot, I'm not a positive psychologist, so I can't answer that question. There might be similarities because both are social constructionist theories, but for me, solution-focused therapy is not positive psychology. I'm not looking for. I'm a strength searcher. I build on people's hope. I ask questions to elicit hopefulness. For me personally, I don't know if I'm answering the question, but it might be in the same umbrella of theories, but it's not the same.
No, agreed. Adam, you want to add anything?
Actually, I would say very similar to what Jackie just said. I think there are some underlying premises that are consistent, right? That when we focus on things that are positive, that are strength-based, that can create change. And I think that there are those similarities do exist. So yes, I think that there is some, but I think that one of the major differences is the emphasis simply on language and language creating reality, and not necessarily needing interventions. I know that a lot of positive psychology, there will be homework tasks, or there will be, there will be things to do or accomplish, and it's all directed toward goals or those kinds of things. And there are some differences between solution-focused brief therapy and positive psychology in those ways, because we believe that simply having this conversation is sufficient.
Perfect. All right. So look, when I said we were going to be here to answer all the questions, I didn't know there would be at the moment 957 comments and 46 questions. So how about we take questions until so 16 more minutes. It will be 4:30 here Central US time. And Melody, did you post the Hope Assessment Scale, the free giveaway link?
I sure have, but I will post it again as soon as we get going with the next question.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, keep posting both links. There's so many comments. I think people are just flying through them.
All right. So how would you use this approach when there is seemingly no hope? Like, for example, when someone is diagnosed with a terminal illness and nothing more can be done.
So we cannot make the assumption that hope is linked to problem. I saw a client who was diagnosed with a terminal illness. She was told that she had about 3 months to live. And she came to therapy. To this day, might be the hardest or at least most tear-filled session I ever did. She came to therapy with a husband and 2 children. And she was diagnosed with an extraordinarily aggressive disease. And I have to assume, even if you've been diagnosed and you have 1 day to live, you have hope for that 1 day. So we can't assume that hope is related to problem. Hope is just hope. And as Adam pointed out, and Adam, what'd you say the person's name was? Snyder, the Hope Scale? That hope is always present. It's just either greater or less than, but it is always present. And actually, the more problem you have, the more hope you have. There tends to be a positive correlation between problem and hope. Because when you're in a real difficult situation, you tend to, that's when you have the most hope for something different. And there was clearly hope present, even though this woman and her family just learned that she was going to be gone within 3 months. And in fact was. I saw the family after she passed, and it wasn't very long after that. But never make the assumption that just because the problem is profound, that hope is not present, because that's just not accurate.
Yeah, the thing that I would add to that too is that there is, Intu did a session with a woman who had HIV long before HIV was, kind of treatable with medication. Now not curable with medication, but this woman, when she got the diagnosis, it was very much consistent with, you are going to die. Right. And she began the session and in essence said, what are your best hopes? And as they kind of navigated through that process, then the clients, in essence, her hopes became, I want to die well. And I think that that's one of the things that we need to remember. They spent a lot of time talking about what would dying well look like. And, there was different connections with different people, and there were things that she wanted to accomplish before that. And I think that it also goes back to what the founders of the approach said many times, which is the problem may have nothing to do with the solution. And I think I would alter that language a bit, and I would say the problem has nothing to do with the presence of hope. All of us have things that we are unsatisfied with about our lives, or things that we wish we could change. That wishing that they could change or hoping that we make it through them is irrelevant to whatever those problems are. So we have to remember, hope is a thing unto itself, and problems are a thing unto themselves. That's
right. And look, before we wrap up, because so many of you are starting to sign up for this, for the training that we just offered, the STOP program, because that's really what we want, right? We want to stop the impact of trauma. I want you guys to put in the chat section, I'm in, once you do that, because that's going to get me really excited that people are jumping in. So those of you who are still on, once you make the decision, jump in, just put I'm in, so we can know to get super duper excited for you and with you.
And we're already having quite a few of those come in. That's super exciting.
Awesome.
All right. So the next, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I just love this so much. If you guys are sitting in front of me, I would high five all of you, hug you around your neck. And honestly, this is an effort and journey of love to be able to do this with Adam and Jackie and do this for you and make sure all of our clients have a greater likelihood of walking into a therapy session and sitting with someone who believes in them. Like, please, I want everybody who can hear my voice to get this course. And again, if we fail on our promise, just tell us and we're no questions asked. But I'm telling you, it is going to change your life.
Are we going to continue with just a couple more questions?
A couple more questions for about 10 more minutes.
Okay. The next one is, how do I stay focused in asking solution-focused questions when the client is asking me, why am I asking questions? You're supposed to figure me out, and getting frustrated.
Okay, so you guys, Adam, Jackie, you guys mind if I take this one?
No, go ahead.
Okay,
Go ahead, Adam.
I'm going to do it in two parts. Number one, if a client asks me a question, I think I have an obligation to answer it. So if a client says, why are you asking me these questions? I'm here because you're supposed to figure me out. I have an obligation to answer the question they asked me. And the second thing is a lesson I learned when I first started doing solution-focused brief therapy. I was working on a treatment team in an agency that did CBT, and I was the only person doing solution-focused brief therapy. And at this particular agency, when any of the therapists went on vacation, we had to cover their cases, and we were doing home visits. So we had to cover their cases and go visit their clients in their home. So one of my colleagues, who was a wonderful cognitive behavioral therapist, guy by the name of Lenny went on vacation, and I had to cover Lenny's clients. So I went to go see one of Lenny's parents, and I started asking these questions, and the client gets really, really irritated with me. Like, why are you asking so many questions? This is really frustrating. And then she said, why don't you just tell me what to do like Lenny does? And I said, you seem to know Lenny really well. And she said, yes. And I said, if Lenny were here, what would he tell you to do? He would tell me to be more patient with my kids and really be consistent. So if you were to follow Lenny's advice and be more patient with the kids and be really consistent, what would you notice? And she started answering the questions. And by the end of the session, she didn't even realize that the questions had continued. She just answered them and experienced the conversation as helpful, even though it didn't happen the way, like, you know what I mean? I didn't stop asking questions because that's my job, but I also didn't start telling her what to do because that's not my job. And she still experienced change. So if someone asks you a question, I think we have an obligation to answer it, but we also have a duty to continue doing our job. And we have to find a question that keeps the pathway going.
All right, and that's all of the more in-depth questions. So I'm gonna just end with a couple brief ones. Yeah. Jackie, a couple people asked if they could use the phrase you coined, which I'm gonna butcher if I try and say it. I think it was resilientologist.
Absolutely.
Okay,
absolutely, perfect. Melody. I just need to warn everybody, if you typed that word, PowerPoint and Word hate it because it doesn't exist. I have a tendency of making up my own words. So please, by all means, we all need to use the word resilientologist and become one.
Yes.
And then also for you, Jackie, a couple people were interested in your travel schedule outside of the South Africa, if you have any trainings coming up, and then also for those that are in South Africa, how can they join your SFB training program?
Thank you, Melody. So in South Africa, they can go on my website, the Solution Focused Institute of South Africa, just to see all the workshops I present during the year. And then travels outside of South Africa is mainly based on when I get invited or when I go and present at a conference. Usually
hosted by Elliot Connie. So you guys, and you know I'm going to bring her back to the U.S. She came to Taos, New Mexico last year, and I would anticipate she'll be coming back to the U.S. Very soon. Now, Jackie, that's a very long trip for her, and she always lands and tells me how tired and disheveled she is, and then she steps on the stage and touches people's hearts. So hopefully Jackie's willing to put herself through long travel again, because Jackie, we want you back.
Thank you so much for all the kind words.
All right. And then for you, Elliot, a book was mentioned at the beginning. A couple people are interested. I think it was co-authored with Adam about that book.
Yeah, that book is Solution Focused Brief Therapy with Clients Managing Trauma from Oxford University Press. You can find it on like Amazon and Barnes, anywhere you can buy a book online, you can find it there. Adam Froer is the first author, Froerer, and I think it's a really, really helpful piece, and kind of the culmination of our work together.
All right. Well, I think that is a good stopping point as far as questions.
Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, listen, Adam, Jackie, I love you guys. Thank you so much. Think of how many lives will be touched. Like I always think about, like, if you can work with a client, you can help a client change a client's life. But if you can start talking to therapists, then it's like our work touches their clients too. So with 1,300 people plus having access to this, so many people's lives get touched. And Adam, your vulnerability to share your story, Jackie, your heart and your passion. I love you guys to death. And we've been talking about this for years, and this was significantly more touching than I ever could have imagined would be. So thank you. And all of you on the course, on this call, thank you so much for donating your time and hanging out with us and allowing us to share our passion. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. I hope that it makes a difference for you. And honestly, I hope you jump into the STOP program. It is, your clients need you to be skilled with this approach, and there's just no shortcut to skill. Now, I really mean it. We promise you take this course, it'll make a difference in the way you work with your clients with trauma, and you won't experience that doubt or hesitation anymore. And if we fail in that promise, just tell us. Like, I'm not here to, like, if we let down that promise, just tell us and we'll return it. But it's just so deep in our hearts. We want you guys to continue the journey so that your clients can get better, and it can make a difference in your life too, in the way that you experience your confidence and your competency level. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. And Adam, Jackie, would you guys like to say anything in closing?
I basically just want to say thank you. Thank you for letting us be a part of your journey. And like Elliot said, I know you can spend so much time and energy and effort in so many places in so many different ways. And to be willing to spend some of that time with us is really meaningful to us. And so if there's anything that we can do to be helpful to you, please let us know. We're happy to try to be helpful where we can.
Yes, and from my side here at the bottom of Africa, I'd like to thank you all for allowing me into your home. I'd like to thank Adam and Elliot for sharing. And as Adam said, please let us know if there's anything more that you'd like us to answer, or anything that we can be helpful with.
Awesome. And Melody, thank you so much. Like, you guys, you gave Melody a ton of work. So right now, there's 1,069 comments that Melody has had to kind of sort her way through, more than 50 questions she had to sort her way through. Melody, I know this is not easy, and I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for all the work that you do. You have brought so much kind of organization and calm into my company, and these things would not be as able to be pulled off without you. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Elliot. I'm more than happy to participate in webinars and anything else you need in your life.
Awesome. So everybody, thank you. Thank you. What I would love for you to do is jump on social media and share one thing you learned from this webinar and hashtag SFBT with trauma. Like, let's really, really share this everywhere. All right. I love you guys. Have a good rest of your day and go touch clients. And hashtag SFBT with trauma. Share one thing you're going to take away from this webinar so we can spread this everywhere. Let's make love.